Like maybe one of the most encouraging things that's ever happened to me as a musician in my life was having this guy who we idolize tell us that our music like touched him, and most music doesn't.
And no one else made you call. I am the cause of my downfall.
Hello everybody, my name is Sean, and I'm here with Advent Horizon, Salt Lake City's premier progressive rock group.
We'll wear that badge.
We got Rylee McDonald and I kind of see him as the band leader, even though Mike really is.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, Mike on drums is actually the band leader, and then we have Cason Wood, who's been around for quite a while, but he's still fighting these other guys to take over.
This is so true.
Yep.
He's trying.
Yeah,
I fight so hard.
Yep. Well, we have a three-party system, unfortunately, and we're all fighting for our place in this democracy.
Well, and then where's
really
Grant
working.
in this? There's a fourth that struggles in a little bit
Yeah,
too.
he's like the green part.
And he's not here though.
Nobody-
He doesn't count if he's not here.
Yeah, he's
Actually, you're right.
So, how are you guys feeling now that you've finally completed a third album after 8 years and you're anticipating releasing it? How are the emotions, the excitement? What's going on in your mind?
Well, first of all, can we swear?
I mean, this isn't broadcast
Not
television.
in the first
so.
60 seconds.
Oh, that's true.
This isn't
That's true.
PBS. Oh, really?
I think
Actually, on
the
YouTube,
algorithm
yeah.
is like, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is going to be cut up into chunks, and we'll use
Okay.
pieces.
All right. Emotions, fucking relieving. Oh my god! I recorded the drums for this record 2 years ago.
It
Longer
was
than that, I
it
think.
3
was
years ago?
May of 2020.
Yeah,
Yep.
3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's been a hell of a journey going from just recording in his old house's kitchen,
Yep.
renovating his kitchen, moving to a new house, and finishing the record.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, you
That
just
would-
described the whole sequence of events.
That is
That's how we made the album.
that's actually kind of what happened.
So when did that begin? So Stagehound is like 2015, and then after that, you guys are kind of on a hiatus to some degree. You played a lot of shows at that point. What happened after that?
Well, we did an EP. Just
Oh yeah, I always forget about
yeah.
tequila.
So do we.
Yeah.
So do we all. It was just kind of like a mild
Sneeze.
sneeze
Yes.
of an
Yeah.
album. I
Yes.
mean, it was fun, and it's some interesting music, but I don't think it was what we wanted to do, so we kind of forget about it.
Well-
Except for Humboldt. Humboldt is a special
Humboldt
song.
Humble is
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Humboldt is a
And
very
unfortunately is our least streamed song out of all of our songs.
Yeah.
Makes me sad.
Should have
but
been a different band, but
well-
you should have sold it to somebody.
I should have. No, so kind of what happened was we released Stagehound. We went on a U.S. tour that was not as successful as we would hope, but that is kind of typical of DIY tours that small indie bands book for themselves, right? It's like one night is a raging house party that's a lot of fun, and the next night you're playing for literally the bartender and in Boston, and it's raining and you have nowhere to sleep, and you end up sleeping in like a warehouse somewhere. And true story.
Very true.
It just was not a successful tour, and the bottom line is we got very frustrated with our situation, especially everybody other than me. I have this way of seeing the world so rose-colored and like, oh, this is like, we're just pushing through, we're just doing what we have to do.
Yeah.
But
I remember there was one drive that we took on that
Mm-hmm.
tour where I was like, this isn't what we want to do. This isn't the music that we want to write, that I want to write. Because, like, this was that was like 2.5 weeks in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell a bunch of the bands that we were playing with, they were like, these guys aren't prog enough, these guys aren't metal enough. Like, they don't fit in this space. So where the fuck do we fit? We fit in that space. But there's like, it was such a weird period of musical time where
Yeah.
there wasn't old school prog anywhere. There wasn't prog rock anywhere. So it was such a foreign sound to so many people. And Stagehound is a prog rock record. It has some heavy riffs. It has some heavier sections, but in general, like, I wouldn't call it a metal record.
But you had even heard that from the record labels too. It's
Yeah.
not prog enough. It's
Yeah.
not this enough. Why aren't you guys enough?
Yeah.
We did think about renaming the band Enough,
Right.
but we passed. But
I mean, for real, we did actually.
We're also
think
just
it
doing-
was a little odd though to play like. Remember that show that we played in Philly where we played with some other prog bands.
Yep.
And everybody just kind of like ignored us. And we were, to be fair, we were playing our most like quote unquote marketable songs. You know, we were doing.
Which are also 6-7 minute songs.
Well, I don't know. Sky's Falling is like 4.5.
Yeah.
Midweek Maniac is just under 5. Like we're doing
Well, like, Sky's
all of our
Falling is
shorter
heavy.
songs, and also we would throw in a cover of Carry On My Wayward Son in the middle.
True.
Like we kind of did all of these like more shorter, catchier, but still like we're a prog band. Like this, there's still sections and weird time signatures and stuff, but we were playing the least weird out of our weird stuff
Yep.
at that Philly show, and it kind of didn't go over that well. I think we sold a couple CDs, and like for the most part nobody cared, and the other bands at the show kind of like snubbed us. And then we played another show like 2 weeks, or not even 2 weeks, it was like a week later in New Jersey, and we ended up on the bill with several of the same bands from that Philly show. And at the Jersey show, this was shortly after we had the conversation you just talked about, where
Yeah.
we were
'Cause
like,
I was
what the
fed
hell are
up.
we doing?
I was
This
fed
sucks.
up.
And so I think the result of that conversation was, well, who cares? Let's just play whatever we want to play then.
So we played like long
So we
format
played
songs.
the whole Serpentine suite,
Yeah.
the whole 18-minute long Serpentine suite of
Yeah.
like 3 songs in a row that go through all these movements, and we did Roach, and part two. So like it was like a 40-minute set, but it was really only like 4 songs.
Yeah.
And these other prog bands came up to us and they were like, "Where was that last week?" Like,
It's like
same
it's the,
band.
yeah,
We're the
exactly. It's
same
the same
guys.
fucking band
yeah.
on the same albums.
Did the audience respond better?
There wasn't really an
what
audience.
audience?
Yeah.
It's a,
Yeah, it's a prog show.
it's a
That's what I
local
said,
prog
yeah.
show.
There's
Yeah.
3 guys there. I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, so we did this tour. We kind of got disillusioned overall with like the prog world, but also like the DIY touring thing and trying to like manage ourselves and book ourselves, and
It's rough.
and also like remember up to this point we were still pretty young. We were like 24, 25 at this point, and we were still young enough to have that glimmering hope of, I'm going to write music and my music is going to take off and I'm going to go tour the world and I'm going to make so much money from my music. We hadn't yet reached the realization that there are a lot of other fish in that sea trying to do the exact same thing we are. And
Well, and the the sea that we're trying to like feed in, like they don't really make that much money either. I think is part of it too,
yeah,
right?
we
Like
just-
look at Devin Townsend, who makes maybe like $50,000-$60,000 a year. I mean, he still has like big shows, but he's not
Right.
making
It's-
millions of dollars.
even the people at the top of the ladder that we're trying to climb are making like a modest middle class living.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we
And don't get it twisted. It's not all about how much money we're making.
no,
but
but
it has to
def-
sustain.
but it's
You have
a
to be able to quit
realization.
your
It does,
job.
exactly.
Is
Yeah.
the goal. You want to
We
quit a
were
job and play
for-
music.
Exactly.
for 5 years prior to this point, we were putting everything into this. We weren't like, we didn't really have other serious day jobs. We didn't like none of us had kids. Like we had built our lives around the band up to that point. And that was the point where we realized that was not a successful business model for a progressive rock band. We had to figure out something else. And so 2016 or 2017, it was actually 2017. I'm just remembering now that all of this whole tour was not actually the Stagehound tour. It was the one we did after that, right after we released Tequila.
You're right, because the
this
Stagehound
was
tour, we went out to
2017.
the West Coast.
Oh, you're
So this is all
right.
2017,
Yeah,
and it was at
okay.
the end of 2017 that we kind of had a band talk where we didn't break up. It was a very us conversation
Yeah.
where it was like, hey, we're not going to make music or play shows anymore, but we're still a band. Like, we're not going to do anything.
And we're still playing gigs
and we're
together.
probably going to disappear and stop posting on social media for years. And but that doesn't mean we broke up. Right. And what we ended up doing, Mike's idea actually was for a couple of years at this point, we had been, like I said earlier, throwing a lot of covers into our sets. We'd been throwing in Carry On My Wayward Son, Stairway to Heaven, maybe a Rush song, whatever. And we were starting to get offers from people who would see us play Advent Horizon shows, and they would come up to us and be like, dude, that was the best cover of a Kansas song I've ever heard. Can I just hire you guys to come play 3 hours of covers like that and no original material? And so we realized that was an opportunity to like to do more in the cover world. And so Mike's solution to this whole broader issue of like this identity crisis we were having as a band is, well, let's stop trying to be both a cover band and an original band. Let's split those entities and let's let one of them maybe go dormant for a while, but let's take that cover band and build it to be what it can be and get as much experience as we can in that world and simultaneously make money that can help us support the original project.
Right, makes sense.
And that was probably the best decision we've ever made as a band.
It's very true.
Oh my god.
Well, it also lets us be
Yeah.
like have some like very artistic integrity for the original project, right?
Right.
Because you're not in these situations. Because I remember situations in Advent where we'd like half the show would be covers and half the show would be originals, and we were just like, I don't know. The guy who hired us, he said that
yeah,
he
'cause-
wants X many covers, and I remember feeling collectively very stressed out about this, being like,
Yeah,
are
'cause
we
we
just
would-
going to turn into a cover
We
band?
would get
Like-
on a bill, and it wouldn't be a bill. It would just be us for 2 hours at a bar. Like we had to fill up an hour space, so we started playing, covers of songs, because that's how Rylee and I started learning how to play music, is by just learning just crazy Rush songs and like learning these chops. And so we would just start throwing these songs out, and then basically that's how we just got better eventually. But it was the weirdest thing, because I was feeling so disheartened by original music, and as soon as we split off, Advent Horizon was on mild hiatus for a while. We started pursuing what we eventually started to call shuffle, and that started to take off. Other people in the cover scene started to notice us. We started getting hired by other bands in the cover scene. Started playing hundreds of hours live a month.
Getting a lot of practice playing live.
A ridiculous amount of live hours, which, as any touring musician knows, is one of the best ways to learn how you play. It's either that or recording in the studio. No amount of practice can prepare you for that amount of time spent. And
Then finally decided to make a record.
yeah.
How did that
Exactly.
happen? I don't even I feel like it was such a gradual thing for us to be like, we're ready to do this.
It was kind of gradual. What happened is there were like moments between 2017 and 2021. There were all these moments where like nothing would happen, and then like something big would happen, and then nothing would happen. And so like to put it into a very condensed timeline, it would be like 2017, we kind of like hiatused the band, but between 2017 and 2018, I was still spending a lot of time in my studio just like writing random crap. And sometimes I would write pop songs, and sometimes I would write like weird funky stuff, and every once in a while there would be some like cool prog metal thing that I would come up with, and I would kind of like earmark it and like say, cool, I'll come back to that later. And so over the course of the next 3 years, I probably came up with 20 or 30 different like basic ideas for songs. And around that same time, my cousin Justin came and hung out with me, and he one day approached me and said, "Hey man, I have an idea for an album that I wanna work on. I want to write a concept album that's a story about a family member of his. So he's not my cousin by blood, it's by marriage, and he has a cousin who I'm not related to who had died of a drug overdose in like a year or two previous to this. And he said, I want to write an album that's a story about my cousin who died of a drug overdose and how the choices he made in his life and the relationships he had that led him to that point." And so Justin and I spent a bunch of time together just like coming up with different random ideas. And it eventually kind of fizzled out, and Justin and I, like Justin moved to another state and things kind of fizzled out and didn't really come to fruition with that project. But the biggest thing that came out of that whole project was the song A Cell to Call Home. Justin and I kind of built that song together. And he actually, if you look at the album credits, he's on that song. I even kept some of his original demo guitar tracks are in the final recording. He and I kind of co-wrote that song. And that song eventually became the inspiration for this whole album. So while this album isn't the it's not the concept album that he imagined necessarily. It is heavily influenced by that story, and the story that this album tells is similar to that. It's a little bit of a loose interpretation story, so I'm not going to go into like the in-depth pieces of all the story, but it loosely follows a similar trajectory, and it's just kind of about love and loss and addiction and dependency and all that stuff.
Now, your vinyl has a few bonus tracks. Did those relate to the concept at all?
Yes, actually. The only other song that made it on the album that Justin and I had worked on, or rather, it was one that I wrote and that Justin, like I showed Justin, and he was like, dude, that's awesome. This should be a part of the album before everything fizzled out, was Half Afraid, which is the one of the bonus tracks. So like that's Justin isn't on that track and he didn't help write it, but that song was actually originally intended to be a part of me and Justin's album. Yeah, and then High Expectations is a big part of that whole story. High Expectations talks about a prodigal son, so to speak, who like leaves home and is kind of disowned by his family and goes down a dark path and then returns home, and his family opens him with welcome arms, but there's all these expectations that are placed on him that he can't live up to, and he eventually decides that home is not home. Home is not the place that he thought it was. That's High Expectations kind of falls into that story.
Very cool.
And some interesting trivia, High Expectations happened to be the first song for this record that the three of us wrote together.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We sat in our practice space.
It was in our old jam space.
Yeah.
And we're like, we just started jamming on something, and we came up with the main verse riff. And
It was actually the main chorus riff, because that verse riff had come about a week before that. We were in Okoboji, Iowa, if you remember this.
Dude, I
remember
the
Okoboji
trip.
Okoboji.
You were writing guitar
And
outside.
I was sitting
Yeah, I
outside
remember
while you
this.
guys were all hanging out in the backyard, like hanging out, having a fire pit or something.
Yeah.
I was just in the front yard, just sitting with my acoustic guitar, and I like came up with this like kind of leprosy sounding guitar riff, and I started singing that "Father, what did I miss?" And like the whole verse of that song just kind of came out of that. And then I recorded it on my phone, didn't know what to do with it, and we came back to it a week
That's
later and
true.
wrote the rest of the song to that.
And yeah, we wrote that song in a practice space.
Yeah.
Which is,
It turned out well.
yeah,
I'm happy with how that one worked. Also the first song we recorded for the album.
yep.
For the most part, does Rylee just write the songs start to finish and you guys jam over it, or what's your songwriting process like?
I think Rylee contributes a lot of the riffs, but Mike contributes a lot of the structure, I would say, if that's a fair way to
Yeah,
put it. Mike's really good about being like, this doesn't need this needs something like this.
Mike's really good at knowing what he doesn't like.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
Actually, that's a really good way to put it. I think the dynamic of our songwriting comes down to Rylee having an idea, or having several ideas to string together a song. Me being like, sucks ass. How about you do this riff instead of that riff, and instead of doing that riff as a fill, you make that riff the replacement riff. Do this. And then, because I don't know what key he's playing in. I'm a drummer. We're all dumb. I'm just like, well, do that, but better. And he'll be like, okay. And
Do that, but make it sound more periphery or whatever.
yeah.
Like,
So I'm like Rick Rubin.
Right.
You know? I'm just like,
Shoes off.
yeah, shoes off, just chilling, just like, how about we do that, but better?
And then Rylee usually has like sketches of bass lines in the demos too.
Yeah,
Like you
usually.
usually have like just like some things that you're aiming for. And sometimes I'm like, that lick's really cool, and then it ends up on the final recording.
yeah.
So tell me, who is Jared? He's another guy on your credits. What did he do for you?
You want to tell the story, Rylee?
Oh, do I?
Oh, yes, this
Oh
is...
boy, do I.
Yes. Do.
So, how far back do I go?
Oh my god,
Where do I
actually, to
start?
explain Jared, it's a very,
Where do I
very,
start?
very long story. Start at the beginning.
Wait, should I start at Torrey? Should I start at Capitol Reef National Park? I feel like that's
so
what,
this is
like,
where it all
that's the
begins.
beginning.
This
That's
is-
the actual beginning.
This is a very good story. So, yeah.
Yeah, sure,
just-
start
okay.
there.
We can cut it if we need to. It's fine.
So, oh man. Okay, so in the days when Advent Horizon was not sure whether it was a cover band or an original band, whether we were a prog band or a classic rock band or a pop band or whatever we were, we used to play once a year at this place called the Rim Rock Cafe in Torrey, Utah, in Capitol Reef National Park, or just outside of Capitol Reef National Park, which is
Gorgeous.
the middle of nowhere. It's actually, it is one of the few like protected dark sky sanctuaries left in North America. So it has like, it's one of the darkest places on like in the Western Hemisphere, like at night. So when you go out in the middle of the night and just look up, you can see the Milky Way. It's incredible. It's like so beautiful. Anyway, very remote place, but it's also kind of touristy because you've got a national park there. And so we would play 2 nights at this place called the Rimrock Cafe, and each night we play for 3 hours, and about a good like 2/3 of it we would play was covers, and 1 hour was originals kind of sprinkled through. And we're playing to all these tourists. You've got a bunch of people from Europe, a bunch of people from Asia, and like a lot of random American people just filtering in and out. And we played a Rush song, I think Spirit of the Radio. And then after we played Spirit of the Radio, we played one of our own songs. I believe it was Motion, if I remember right. And
Damn, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like my memory's not that good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Motion, because she came up after we played Motion. This lady comes up to us and she says, "Hey, you guys have a really cool like progressive rock sound. It reminds me a lot of like Rush and Yes and all these classic prog bands." And we were like, "Oh, that's really cool that you know all this classic prog stuff. Those are our influences. That's really cool." And she said, "Well, it happens. My husband actually plays in a bass in a progressive rock band, and I think my husband would really like your music. Would it be okay if I buy a copy of your CD from you and give it to him?" And we said, "Oh, that's cool. What band is your husband in?" And she said, "Well, he's the bass player for a band called Spock's Beard." And we all just like what? Like Cason especially.
Yeah, because I have like idolized Dave Meros since I was like 14. Like he was my like childhood prog alive bass player. You know what I mean? Like that was the guy I was like, dude, that guy's got sick tone. I know his bass pickups, and like it's so cool that he's got a partial P bass.
He's probably
I
got
was nerdy
the
about
most
it.
distinctive bass tone
He does.
I've ever
He's
heard.
got a great bass sound. Yeah.
Like, you know, the second you hear that bass tone, you're like, "Oh, I'm listening to Spock's Beard right now." Or possibly I'm listening to Iron Butterfly with him playing bass. But anyway, so we all kind of freaked out, and we ended up like giving her a couple copies of the CD, and I didn't know what would come of it, but a couple of weeks later, I got a Facebook message from Dave Meros that said, "Hey, just want to let you guys know, I get handed CDs all the time. I never like them. I'm like notorious for not liking new music that people show me. I have not had something touch me like this in a long time." Like he was very, very excited about how much our music touched him, and that was like maybe one of the most encouraging things that's ever happened to me as a musician in my life, was having this guy who we idolize tell us that our music like touched him, and most music doesn't. So that was very, very cool. And we kind of from that kept in touch with Dave, and on our next tour he came out. He and his wife lived just outside of Sacramento, and they came out to our Sacramento show and hung out with us. We went to In-N-Out Burger for a while after, and got to know them, and kind of became a tradition. Like every time we would go through California, we would just, even if we weren't on tour or anything, like we would just kind of stop in and say, "Hey Dave, let's go to dinner," and like kind of kept tabs with him. And at some point along the way, Dave introduced Spock's Beard's publicist to our music. And she fell in love with our music too. And this was around, this was like right around the time we released Stagehound, was when he introduced their publicist to us. And she reached out to us and said, "Hey, I would like to help you guys out. I'd like to help do like some social media stuff for you, help try to get your name out in the prog world a little bit, because I think like people will like you if we can get you into the right ears." So her name is Sonia, and she has since become one of our best friends. Like we've spent a lot of time with Sonia and her family. Her mother is like this incredible She's probably like 94 now, 93, 94, I think.
She's unreal.
She's
absolutely
like
unreal.
incredible piano player. She's a singer. Like
She plays in churches back home. She's just a monster.
Like her we call her they call her, and now we call her Mom. That's her name, is Mom.
I saw a memory the other day that was like, you can stay in Mom's house anytime.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
It's like, yeah, so it kind of, that became our stopover point. Is they live in Philly, and so every time we would go through Philly, we would stay with Sonia and Mom, and so through that relationship, Sonia introduced us to her son, whose name is Jared.
Okay.
And
Like I said,
it's
long
a
story.
It's a
It's
story.
getting there. It's getting
But
there.
there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
A lot of good
Story.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody in their family, they're all piano players. Mom has been like this monster gospel piano player since like probably the 40s or 50s or something.
Yeah, I remember her talking about like John Coltrane and Miles Davis records. Like me and her together, she was like, "You like old jazz? Let's talk about John Coltrane." So she's very much from that era.
And so Mom is amazing. Sonia is also a great piano player, and then they kind of passed down that love of it to their son, who just took it to a whole other level. Like Jared is, I don't even know how to adequately describe him with words. Like it's not possible to exaggerate how good this kid is. He's a scary
monster,
good.
for
Yeah,
sure.
he's-
On everything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not just piano.
I remember
On
jamming
piano,
with him,
he's
and
a
he picked up the
genius.
bass, and I was like, "How are you this good? You can't play piano that well and bass that well." That's
Then he
not
hops
cool.
on drums like, Jared, stop.
Yeah, we
Giving
had
us
like
a bad name.
we had a jam session with him.
He's a
at-
little bit younger than we are.
Yeah,
really?
just by a couple years. I
so
think.
we were like 24, 25. He was 19.
Really okay.
that
So it's
tour.
more like
he's,
6
He's
years.
5-6 years younger than us.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah,
Small numbers.
So we got to know Jared pretty well. He had a band called Roswell, and they joined us for several dates on one of our tours, kind of around upstate New York, because that's where he lives, is in Buffalo, New York. And Jared just kind of became a buddy of ours. Like he ended up flying out to Utah and spending like 2 or 3 weeks at my house and played a bunch of gigs with us. Kind of guested on piano with us for some stuff. He actually, when I wrote the song Maybe, Jared was at my house when I wrote that. And he and I like set up a little jam space while he was staying with me, and I was just jamming through all the chords of that song. And I remember hearing him just vibing around with the piano on that song, messing around with cool different ideas. And that sound stuck in my head, which is why when we finally produced the song, I had to call Jared and be like, dude, we gotta have you on this song. And it turned into him being on Maybe, but also on Water. He did most of the piano work on the song Water. But then he also composed for us a 2-minute interlude that comes after the first track, Water. So that the second track on the album is all Jared. Like he wrote it, he recorded it himself and sent me the recording, and we mixed it in. That's all him. He kind of has his own minute on the album, which that song is called Snow Child, which Snow Child is the name of Jared's new band that just released an album.
And did you help with that too? Did you do some production work on that or something?
No, I wish. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I could take credit, because
Right.
they did a great job. Actually, that album they did a lot of the tracking at a studio in, I want to say it was like New Jersey or something, but then they ended up not having it mixed at that studio. They ended up taking all the tracks and sending them to a guy named Joe. I don't know his last name. I only know him as Joey. He's the lead singer of a band named The Reign of Kindo. And Joey fully produced and mixed all of their album. And then Joey did a guest feature on vocals on their album. And then they sent their album to Jens Bogren, who's like a world-renowned metal producer, and Jens mastered it. So it's
And he mastered ours as well.
Jens. That's actually how I knew that I could hire Jens. Is I was like,
Okay.
oh, Jared did it. Cool, awesome. I'm gonna call Jens too.
So I had been under the impression that like the piano on the first track was Cason.
It's a
'cause Cason
mixture.
has
It's
gotten-
mixture.
It's about 50-50.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I was gonna say I think, I mean, at this point I don't fully remember exactly, because you recorded, I know there's some songs that you recorded Mellotron, because I remember like all the Mellotron parts. I remember going through them, and maybe we spent some time with like different sounds, but I remember that we were like, yeah, this is fine.
At this point, it is kind of hard to remember what keys on the album were done by who.
I do know that the pianos,
many.
the
The drums are done
pianos
by me.
on Water, like specifically the actual piano parts, are Jared. The synth work is me, and then the piano parts on Maybe are Jared. All the
Yeah,
other
all
pianos are me, and then the synths are a mixture of me, I think mostly, and then it's probably like a 60-40 split or something like that.
Probably. There were a few of the songs where we just we copy and pasted all of my synths from the demo and just threw them on the final recording. I think Truth was one of those with all the synths. We
I
just
remember
grabbed all
we
the
changed
Junos.
some timbre stuff though, because I remember
we
going
did. We
through and
changed
being
some
like,
sound.
Well, and-
does this synth sound good? And being like, nah, we need to adjust some things.
Well, and then after all of the parts were recorded, when Rylee and I were getting together and doing just general mixing, editing, stuff like that, there would be portions of songs that felt too cluttered.
Yeah, we had to
sonically
get
in
rid of some
specific
stuff.
spaces, and so then we would sit down, either with a MIDI or the Juno or something, and try to replace a sound in the mix to make it breathe a little bit more. So there's a lot.
Well, there's like a
There's a lot of moving parts, fingers in the pie kind of
Well,
situation.
if you remember with Stagehound, we made a big deal as we were producing Stagehound out of we don't want any keyboards on this album. We want it to be all guitar, bass, drums, vocals, like straight up rock and roll. But what ended up happening was I got all these huge grand ideas in my mind of what I want the song to sound like, that typically to pull it off you would use keyboards. But since we had this rule of not using keyboards, it just ended up with way too many guitars. And Stagehound has, there's places in that album where there will be 9 guitar tracks at the same time playing on top of each other, which was a horrible idea and ended up being, really, really difficult to mix. Hats off to Matt Weiniger for doing what literally nobody else could do, in my
Matt's a
opinion.
genius. So.
Yep.
And that's also a funny reason, one of the funnier reasons why we stopped playing all of that stuff live. It's because we couldn't.
We didn't have 9 guitarists.
Yeah, we could not. Because all of them are important, you
Yeah.
know? Everything on Stagehound was important. And I think this leads to a whole separate conversation, right? Because at this point, we're just kind of going. But that led to the ethos of this new album was, does it fit and does it sound good? You know?
and we'll figure out playing it live at another time, I think was the conversation. We were just
Yeah.
like, you know what, let's just record it and not think about this problem and kick that can down the road.
Well,
If we need tracks, whatever.
I think I wanted to approach this album as if we were a studio band and not a live band. One of my favorite things about Steely Dan is that in all of Steely Dan's later albums, you can tell they were not thinking at all about even trying to perform those songs live. They were just writing what was right for the song, regardless of whether or not it was something that could realistically be created faithfully live. Because at that point, they weren't playing live anymore. Steely Dan only played live concerts, I think, for the first 2 albums of their career, really, until they reunited later. And that, I really liked that idea of just thinking about what does the song need? What's the best possible choice we could make to make this sound as good as it can sound? And let's just do that. And also, there's the fact that we are a very unknown prog band that will probably never make a significant amount of money off of our own music, and we're aware of that, and we're fine with it now because we have other sources of income from playing party band shows and stuff, right? But because we are not worried about making money off of our own music anymore, it kind of de-incentivizes us from actually playing any of this stuff live. So I personally have not cared too much about whether Advent does live shows or not, unless it's a big thing. I'm done playing, and I think we all are, we're done playing the local scene. Yeah. We're done trying to be that local band that's playing the bar on Friday night and trying to get their friends to go see them. I just don't care anymore about trying to sell tickets to bars.
Well, and it's not been sustainable. I fundamentally don't think it is sustainable. I think it's really hard.
Well,
It
and
sucks.
so many of our friends that went down that road don't play music anymore. Just at all.
It's because it's soul crushing.
It is. It burns you out incredibly quickly.
Yep.
If you're not one of the 1% luckiest bands in the world to be playing at some place down in Provo and some guy sees you and he's like, "You're gonna be big, kids."
The
Like,
right place, the right sound, the right
Yeah.
time.
The prog world doesn't have enough of a concentration of fans for any one city to have a strong prog music scene. That doesn't really exist. Maybe there's somewhere in Europe, I don't know, but in the US at least, that's not really a thing.
Right.
And so we kind of approached this whole album with like let's just record what sounds best. And if we ever do it live, the only reason we're going to do it is because we get invited to do like some festival or some cool opening act for a bigger prog band or something.
which is
That's-
definitely the opposite of what Stagehound was. Because Stagehound, we wrote the entire record in a garage, playing it all. We wrote it from start to finish, and then we filled in the space afterwards.
Yeah.
And then we
This
took
was
it
the
on-
exact, not even the exact opposite, but mostly the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's an interesting shift what a few years will do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were to attempt to play a Sail to Call Home or something, one of the more epic pieces, that listening to this album, you can tell sometimes on some of these songs, it's like, okay, this is like, all right, the first few minutes was a recorded song, and now we have a little interlude, and now the next few minutes is a recorded song. Like you can kind of tell that in the process. So would you consider adding another member on stage to help you get through those changes?
Yeah, we already have.
Yeah.
Actually. So
Other than Matt.
so that's one of the interesting
Or Grant, I mean.
Grant.
I said
It's-
Grant Matheson.
Matt. That's a good name for him.
Matt Grant.
That's one of the interesting shifts with this album. Cason's always been the bass player for this band. But the more we got into the recording process for this album, the more we realized that Cason's role in the band isn't bass player. It's like multi-instrumentalist.
Recorded a lot of key parts for that
And so because Cason was the one that played most of the keyboard parts on this album, it's actually been decided that when we do get to playing live, it's going to be Cason that does all the key stuff live. And we've got a new bass player who's going to be joining us. He'll be featured in the music videos that we're filming over this summer.
Interesting.
His name's Kris Hartman. He's
Brilliant guy.
awesome dude.
Super rad.
Good guitar player. Really, really good bass player. Super chill dude.
He's a new kitten.
He's
Has a new kitten.
has a
He
new
does have a new
Yeah,
kitten.
he's-
It's Miso is adorable.
He's
man.
an old friend of ours, and we've loved him for years, and so we're happy that he's willing to join us, even if for now it's just for a couple music videos.
Cool.
Yeah, and hypothetical shows.
Yeah, if shows happen, then we'll do
Maybe.
it for sure.
Yep, exactly.
It's still gonna be a nightmare, man. There are
So
like
we'll be a 5-piece band, yeah. And
there's so many layers in those
So
key parts.
I have, oh man, you should see it. I have spreadsheets that I've made of how we're going to play these songs live. And the spreadsheet will have like a column for Grant, a column for Cason, and like
Yeah.
Grant will be like switching back and forth between like he's doing vocals, now he's doing shaker, now he's doing this specific synthesizer part, now he's playing this guitar melody, and now he's back to vocals. And Cason's kind of like
Playing
just
keys
all these different key things
and
stacked
playing
around.
foot bass.
And then there's
sections.
another column on
Good
it
on you,
that's
Giddy.
there's a last column after all the members that just says what's missing ? And in almost every section of every song there's still something
Oh,
that's
man.
missing. Usually we've got it to where it's minor things that are missing, like oh there's a guitar solo here, and there's in the album there's a backup
Rhythm
guitar, a
guitar,
rhythm
yeah.
guitar behind that solo, but we could kind of live without that live. So it's just trying to make decisions of what are the most important things to recreate, and it's possible we'll end up with some backing tracks depending on how rehearsals go. But
And
we'll
one of
figure it
the
out.
things that we've kind of thrown around there is, do we want to play rigid backing tracks
Right.
on a laptop, or do we want to have somebody trigger like
trigger
samples
sounds
or sounds or whatever? I don't want to.
But you would be comfortable having headphones. Can you do it? You can do it.
Oh,
You're the
So
skill.
you'd rather do it like party band style, not Neil Peart style. In other words,
It's less work,
It
less
is-
prone to error.
It is.
Yeah.
it is
I don't
yeah.
disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
I think the better way to do it is to press play on Ableton on the
Yeah.
laptop and
No,
let
exactly.
the laptop play through the
'Cause-
backing tracks. And what I really liked was, do you remember that band Forever at Last that we
Yes.
played
Yeah,
some shows with
absolutely,
years
yeah.
ago? It was brilliant the way that they had their backing tracks set up, because they had they had a second guitar player for their studio stuff, but live they only toured with one guitar player. What they did was they had everything set up on Ableton, everything routed, and they would press play, and the backing tracks contained some keyboard stuff, some vocals, but all the second guitar parts. And what it did was it routed all the second guitars out of their own output into an orange amplifier on the stage, and the sound came out of the orange amplifier on the stage as if there was a guitar player playing through that amp. It was brilliant.
So
and
it gave it
sounded,
that live
from an
feel.
audience perspective, it sounded exactly as if there were two guitar players on stage with you. It was perfect. So maybe something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Maybe we get
We'll see.
wild with it.
Yeah.
So is there a specific song on this album that stands out to you as being closest to your heart?
There's two for me.
There are many that hold high places for me.
I like a lot of the sections.
That was good.
Hey.
That was good.
For
Nerd.
me, I really like the single that we just released, Rain on Open Water. I really like that track. I dig it. I think it's concise. I think it's also still proggy, which is awesome. And I also
Tell
really...
that to all the playlisters that denied it already.
jerks. I
they're a bunch of
also...
bitches.
I mean, I like a lot of the record, like a lot of the songs on the record, but I absolutely love the last track on the record.
Yeah.
Hold Me.
Hold Me is like, I think it's one of the most beautiful songs you've ever written. Like, for sure.
100%.
Hold
And
Me
like,
wins for me.
it's kind of
Yeah.
got this like Midwest emo sad boy vibe to me, but it works so well. It's like dripping with emotion.
Yeah.
It gets me every time. I'm like,
It's-
dude, Rylee, you killed it.
Midwest emo sad boy, I can agree with that on the sounds. But to me, it just sounds like the most Steven Wilson thing I've ever written.
No, for no,
prog
100%
plus
for
Midwest
me,
emo
For
sad
me,
boy.
it's very
Yeah,
much
exactly.
like imagine the saddest Steven Wilson song, and that's what that song is.
Yeah.
Which is, and sitting here, I just was thinking, what is like the song that means the most to me, or like that I like the most, or whatever. And I think it's A Cell to Call Home, because I had nothing to do with it. Like,
That's true. I did
Like-
kind of just like hand it to
yeah,
you completed
you
and said,
wrote
here's
most of
this.
the drums for me.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
a lot
that's
of
right.
a
I
lot
forgot
of the
about that.
drums that you wrote specifically on the demo, because everything else I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Every other song I had, like, a lot of the chunks of the songs were my writing creatively.
Mm-hmm.
But Cell to Call Home was the one song that I had almost nothing to do with, and it's my favorite song because it's
Interesting.
fucking rad. And I think it's also because I'm less emotionally attached to it, so
Yeah.
I can kind of sit back a little bit more from it and be like,
I feel like a listener more
that's
than a
cool.
writer.
And that's a 10-minute song, but
Yeah.
can you, as the drummer, sit back and play that whole song, or do you have some cut-ins on the recording?
I mean, I can play this entire album from start
Right.
to finish.
Yeah.
Without stop.
Yeah, we
These
did.
two are going to have more of a struggle.
We
Yeah.
tracked the drums all the way through that song, if I
Yeah.
remember right. We didn't cut pieces of. I mean, like we
I don't
we
like
did
recording
probably
that way.
9
Right.
takes of it all the way
Yep,
through, and then we
exactly.
spliced
Yeah.
the best pieces of the takes. But we tracked each take start to finish.
I do not like tracking, starting tracking, stopping,
for
and
sure.
repeating a section over and over again.
It's the
Only a
worst as a
couple places on
drummer.
the whole
It sucks
album
as a
that we
drummer.
did.
For a guitarist, you're just like...
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to be careful with drums too,
Yep.
because you need to be aware of like what you did before. Like you can't
Yeah.
just like
Well, and
plug a
that
drum
was,
in.
That was my biggest problem on this record is, like, punching in and not being aware of what I did the last take.
Yep. I was gonna say, I think our process
mess.
is generally when we record is like get at least a few safety takes, like pretty good takes, and then if you need to, you can do what you need.
Yeah.
So tell me about the album cover. Where did this concept come from? And then tell me about who is the artist.
So it's actually better to do it the other way around.
Okay.
So we have a friend who's helping us with a lot of press stuff for this album. His name's Austin Coquel, and he's the guy that helped us line up all the guest artists who are on the album. And he also connected us with Travis Smith, who Travis is like a legendary like digital art creator. He's done album covers for a lot of our favorite bands. Like he's the one
Yep.
that did the Opeth Watershed album cover.
Didn't he do Ghost
He did
Reveries too?
Ghost Reveries. He did Heritage. He's done a bunch of Mastodon, Lamb of God.
Ziltoid the Omniscient.
Oh
by
yeah, he
Dip.
did Ziltoid and a bunch of other Devintowns and stuff. Like he's been around forever, and he's done like all of the biggest metal bands. He's done at least something for them. So we reached out to him, and surprisingly, he got back to us and said he was interested. And so he helped us come up with the concepts. Basically, I gave him I gave him kind of a synopsis of the story of the album, and he went through that and came up with a bunch of themes from the album. He said, well, you have a lot of water, so there's some themes there, but there also seem to be like a lot of elements of like moving on and getting over things and leaving and all this movement. So maybe we should include like train tracks somewhere. There's also a lot of like secrecy and stuff, so maybe we have like a locked drawer. There's elements of, there's a lot of mentions of angels, but also a lot of mentions of like drowning or being submerged in water or being lost at sea. So maybe we need an angel lost at sea, and you can see a lighthouse in the distance. Like, he kind of helped take all the elements from the album and summarize them into imagery.
Very cool.
And that's what we see there on the album cover, as well as all the other art that's within the liner notes. He was awesome to work with, like super, super great guy to work with.
Mm-hmm. So when you guys, so you kind of came out of your hiatus. You approached these guys because you had a full album length of songs. How did that work? And then you guys just started jamming it? How long until you were in the studio? It was more than a full album length of songs at first.
We cut a ton of
We
stuff
cut,
out.
yeah, there were probably an extra 4 to 6 songs that we didn't end up using.
So you came back just loaded with material. And
yeah,
this is
yeah.
mostly Rylee songs?
Yeah, these are like, so it's like I'll write a song, and when I write a song, it's like I open a Pro Tools session and I sit for 6 hours in front of my computer and just like barf out all my ideas into the computer, you know, like it's just all the random disjointed ideas that I come up with, and I kind of try to summarize them into a song as best I can with verses and choruses and stuff. And once I've got something that I'm like somewhat satisfied with that has a basic framework, that's when I show it to the guys and say, hey, give me input. And that's when Mike and I kind of from there build it into the the actual composition.
Riley would show me the bones and I would add some meat to it.
That's
There you go.
awesome.
Yep.
So this really is all Mike's band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it.
Yeah,
You're not wrong.
for sure.
You're not wrong.
I mean, I'm not the creative force, but I definitely am a driving force in making
Well, you're
these
still a
things
creative
happen.
I've
yeah.
I've done a lot of songwriting without you, and I can write songs that sound similar to this, but I can't write songs that sound like Advent. Like, I can write songs that sound like, oh, that's a riff that Rylee wrote, or oh, that's obviously a chorus that Rylee wrote. Like, you'll hear things that it's like, that's obviously my style, but the overall songs won't hit the same.
Right.
It's like Mike is what brings like this kind of I don't know.
Don't
like,
say edgy.
No, not edgy. I was gonna say atmosphere, but that's not even the right word.
No,
like,
it's
you
more
just-
of...
Mike's editing,
It's
and
a
he has
structural
heavier sensibilities as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Venues.
That's
Yeah.
true. The songs do tend to get heavier when you get your paws all over them.
Yeah. I even added blast beats on this record.
And screaming. There's some screaming tucked in there too.
And you
Oh, really?
refused,
Water.
historically,
It's
you
like tucked
refused
in, but-
both of those
it's
things.
it's very tucked. I got to mix it, so it's very tucked.
And did everybody
talked about
foresee
this.
Cason becoming a powerhouse in the keyboard world?
No.
I'm just
That's
such
all.
a
How
That's all
the
him.
fuck? I mean, it is because he's a nerd.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna speak for you.
Okay.
All I saw was you just buying random stuff and sitting in your basement, just like fucking around. You're like, "Hey guys, I bought this new thing. I don't know how to play it." Like
And that's
a
why
week
we have
later.
a talk box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, we
a
have
week later,
Moog
you come
through a
back.
talk box.
Listen to these cool sounds I can make. Just like you just nerding out forever in
Yeah.
your basement, which is so sick.
Yeah, I think
awesome.
I've been wanting to play keys for a long time, probably even since before I joined Advent, and I didn't because I was just busy playing bass. And then I remember at one point I was like, I told my wife, who was my partner at my time, I was like, hey, I want to learn how to play keys. I'm going to buy this expensive keyboard. She's like, what are you talking about? You want to spend that much money? Why don't we just see if you kind of want to play keys and buy you something cheap? And I was like, you don't understand. I know that this is what I want to do, and I know if I buy something super cheap, I'm just like not going to enjoy my time as much. So I'm going to buy something nice. And she's like, okay, whatever, my hands are tied. And then, yeah, several years later, here I am. Still buying
You go into-
expensive
Still buying
keyboards.
expensive-
You go into his office and he has this little tiny bass amp, and all of his walls are filled
It's a bad
with
habit.
analog synths.
Analog synths are a bad habit.
It's a problem.
It is actually a
It's an
problem.
addiction.
So this is why Kris is definitely going to have to be the new bassist.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
We
cool.
weren't sure at first. We were like, well, we'll bring Chris on. Maybe he'll end up doing a bunch of guitar stuff, and like Grant will play a lot of keys. But it kind of just turned into now Cason's doing like 80% of the keys are going to be Cason live, and Grant will fill in extra guitar stuff, extra key stuff, extra vocal stuff. Like,
I do like, though, the fact that I feel like so many of the people in this band are, like, multi-instrumentalists. Like, I feel like we could be like, hey, Kris, take this guitar part, and I wouldn't stress about it.
No,
You know,
we
and
could
same thing
handle
with
it.
you in bass. Like, you're also a great bass player, so it's like, it's nice to have, like, all these weird redundancies.
I'm glad I only
sit
play
still.
drums.
Yeah, you sit still.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You just chill in the
happy.
back, man.
So
just
what,
keep doing your
a couple
thing. man.
years, and then you'll learn that Jordan Rudess solo.
Oh my god,
already working on
I
it.
have to work on that. Did you send me the half speed?
No, I
Okay.
gotta do that.
Oh, this is a world premiere. We have Jordan Rudess do a solo.
That's right.
Oh, nobody knew that yet.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned it anywhere yet.
So how do you get Jordan Rudess? You just gotta pay that big dollar.
That sweet money.
That's pretty
no,
much
so for Jordan Rudess specifically, we got really lucky because we reached out to him in 2021, which, if you recall, not a lot of bands were touring in 2021. Dream Theater wasn't on the road, so Jordan was kind of just, from what I gathered, just stuck at home with not a lot to do. And so we reached out to him. We sent our all the demos for our album to his publicist, and specifically the song "Calling It Off" we highlighted and said, "Hey, we would like Jordan to play on this song." His publicist listened, liked the song, sent it on to Jordan, and Jordan came back and said, "Hey, this is awesome. I'd love to be a part of this. Yeah, that's great." So, yes, we paid him. I don't think, if we were to reach out to him today to do the same thing, I don't think he would say yes to us. I think it was just a happenstance that he had nothing better to do at the moment.
I do remember, though, that we were recording synths when because I remember that we got a notification that, like, Jordan had downloaded the thing, and I was like, oh.
I got the WeTransfer
And then,
notification.
seriously, like, it was like, it can't have been much more than, like, 2 hours later. It was like, Jordan has uploaded a solo, and I was like, 2 hours? That's kind of quick.
2 hours. From
And
when
I
he
remember
downloaded.
clicking
Oh,
it
man.
and just being like, oh my god.
And
He's so good.
And it's
He
one
did
of the
that in
coolest
2
solos on
hours.
the record.
Yeah, for
By
sure.
far.
It's nuts.
I nerded out about
he
that.
killed it, and he did a good job too. He was really great to work with. He and I scheduled like a Zoom call together before I sent him the tracks. So like he had listened to the song, but before I sent him like the down mixed files to record to, he did a Zoom call with me where he basically just got to know me musically. Like he kind of talked about like, what are your influences? What specifically for this song? What are your influences? What are you picturing for sound? Like what did He kind of just talked about like musical history behind the music. He did a good job of like screening the song to figure out what it needed, which, I mean, really what it needed was a Jordan Rudess Dream Theater solo, and that's what he ended up doing.
Yep.
But if it had been a song that needed like a really like beautiful classical piano piece, he would have done exactly what it needed. Like I could tell he's the kind of guy that was ready to give the composition whatever the song needed, not what he wanted, or not like what he would.
He even went above and beyond. He recorded some parts directly after his allotted solo spot.
Oh yeah, we didn't even tell him to do that. So there's all these there's this really fast harmonized arpeggiated guitar part and guitar and key thing that happens right after the key solo, and we didn't tell him to do anything. I mentioned that it was there, and I was
Right,
like,
but he follows that melody.
But he like went through to the end of the song and followed it and carried it out, and that was like, it warms my heart to this day.
I was wondering about that too, because he definitely keeps going, and you're like, oh, now he's just playing with the band.
Now he's just part of the song.
Right.
That is so sick.
Couldn't be happier with how that one turned out.
How did it get so good?
Oh my
How did
god.
it get so good? Which is another amazing guest spot. Randy McStine, the current touring guitar player for Porcupine Tree. Another one where we got lucky because we contacted Randy through, again, my friend Austin Coquel, who's been helping us a lot with this album. We contacted Randy because Randy and Austin are good friends, but this is before Randy got invited to play with Porcupine Tree. He was at the time his like biggest thing that we were aware of that he had done is he had a project with Marco Miniman, who was touring drummer for Steven Wilson and also the drummer of the Aristocrats.
Not just touring drummer.
Well, yeah, he was like
He
the
did-
drummer for
he-
Steven
he
Wilson
did
for the best
my
album ever written.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
No, it shall remain nameless.
Yeah. Good.
So
They can figure it out.
anyway, Randy was like kind enough to be willing to record a part for us, but the process was very different from working with Jordan, because Randy is what Jordan is well known for is doing these Dream Theater epic solos, right? Randy is well known for being a wacky, experimental, like making a guitar sound like it's not a guitar type
More
guy.
of a Zappa kind of guy.
Yeah.
Oh, for
and
sure.
The first solo that he sent us was way more in that vein. And we listened to it and we went, dude, this is awesome, but I don't think this is what... I don't think we can put this in the... Like,
it very much
it's
didn't
like,
fit the vibe of the song.
Yeah.
Because I remember sitting in your studio and listening to the tracks that he sent over. It's like, this is a completely different song, like, sonically.
Yep.
And...
It changed the entire feel of the song. And
Yeah.
it was really... Like, I can't understate the fact that I thought it was freaking cool.
Yes.
But it was
But
out
it was
there.
like,
it was definitely
this is
Frank
like,
Zappa
this
has
is
entered
cool,
the
but this is
chat.
not anything that Advent should ever be.
So to kind of frame this, the whole section over which he is soloing wasn't originally written to be a part of the song. It was a fill that Rylee wrote. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And I was like, that's way cooler than the part you had after. Just make that the main riff for this part that came after. So this part is heavy. It's
very
and
riffy.
It's driving. And it needs power. And what Randy sent over had power, but it was such a... It almost felt removed.
So what Randy did, we went back to him, and it was like really awkward too. 'Cause
Yeah.
this is like a
Yeah,
guy
it was
that's
very
this is a guy that we look up to. Like
Yeah.
he's an
He's a
amazing
genius.
player. He's a genius, and we so small compared to him. Like he's such a big player in the prog world. We reached out to him and we're like, hey man, like I really like what you did. Can you do something different? We were kind of
So
hoping you could
awkward.
maybe just like do a solo that like starts a little melodic and then ends up kind of shredding by the end. And he was like, "Oh yeah, so like exactly what you would expect the song would do. Sorry, I was trying to do something unexpected." I was like, "Oh, you got us." Like,
Sign that guy up to work with me. I'll take him any day.
For sure.
but yeah, he said his second pass of it was like exactly what the song needed. It was so perfect. So he sent us the second recording, and what he sent was so cool. It starts out kind of with this like melodic thing that follows the synth line that precedes it, which I thought was a really cool way to start that solo. It's like he's tagging that synth line
It's
a
like
little
a call
bit.
response kind of thing.
And,
Yeah.
But then he descends into this crazy like diminished
80s shredder.
He kind of cut in again, didn't he?
like what
Doesn't
he
it
did
sound like
was
it?
he took some of the weirdness from his first solo that he sent us, and he incorporated those little weird isms into his full solo.
Sweet.
So if you look like in a Pro Tools session at this song, you'll see like his main solo, but then there's like 6 other tracks that like come in and out,
And it's just random
and they're
noise,
like panned back and forth and doing
Love
all
it.
this crazy
I
stuff.
love that.
It's
It's
nuts.
my
he did a
favorite shit.
great job. We're so happy with how it turned out, and he mentioned that this is one of the shreddiest solos he's ever done in his career, and that makes me very happy because he's not like he's an incredibly like proficient guitar player. He can do anything you need him to do, but he's not known for shredding. That's not something that most people think of when they think of him, and that we got him to do that like makes me smile.
You wanted to
Gotcha.
do weird stuff, but you're shredding now.
So we talked about Dave Meros earlier, but we didn't actually talk about how he's on the album. And he kills it to the point where my ear is following that bass line,
Dude,
and
that
it is
fill-
hard
bass
to
line
listen
is
to the
what
rest of the
drives the
song.
song, man.
It's hard to listen to the song, sorry.
That fill when he comes back in is so good.
Oh, I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Dave, Dave, I reached out to him before we even knew what song he would be guesting on, and I just said, "Hey man, like we've really appreciated your support and your friendship. Would you be interested in doing a track on the album with us?" And he was like, if I remember right, Dave's response was basically like, "I don't know why you would want me to guest on bass, like a bass player to guest on any song. Like what? Nobody asks for bass players to guest on their album." But he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." We asked. So we ended up choosing that song because that's the only song on the record Actually, I think the only Advent Horizon song ever recorded that doesn't have any electric guitars in it. It's all acoustic guitars. So it left a lot of open space for the bass to be like the feature of the song. And
originally you wanted him to do the outro solo to Sell to Call Home.
Oh yeah, that's right. I
And-
forgot about that.
When he came back to you, he's like, nah.
Well, what he said was, "Hey man, so I listened to the outro solo that you have on the demo, that Cason played on the demo, and I kind of just like that. If I was you, I would just keep the outro solo on Sell to Call Home that you already have, because I don't know that, I could write something different, but it won't necessarily be better than what you already have. So let's do a different song, and that's when
good.
Your Flaws.
I'm so
became
glad to
known.
have him on a full track. Like genuinely,
God.
like
Yeah, it
he
sounds
killed
so
it. His sound is so good, and like it just, I don't know, it gave that song a little something.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It's especially the last like 45 seconds to a minute of that song when he really starts digging in, and you can hear like the crunchiness of his bass
The
tone.
grit.
So good.
That's
So
how
good.
who's the singer on that track?
That would be my wife. So Kristen and I have this funny dynamic where she doesn't like people hearing her sing, but I continually like trick her into singing in my studio, and so like she's ended up on. She's ended up on.
Gotcha.
There's one of our other bands has a song called. One of our other bands, Beach Death, has a song called Sleeping Season, and Kristen's on that song. Her voice is
right,
there.
yeah.
She sings on it.
So good.
And that song has more streams than every other song I've ever released combined. That song has like it outshadows everything else, and my voice isn't on that song,
That's
and hers
funny, huh?
is. And
Yeah.
I always joke with her that like more people have heard your voice than mine. Like 500,000 people can't be wrong, Kristen. Like you've got a good voice. So it was similar with this album where there were two songs, both Truth and Your Flaws, where there were vocal parts that I wrote that were higher than I was able to sing, and I didn't want to transpose them down or change. Like I knew what melody I wanted, and my voice couldn't do it. So I just, in the demo phase, said, "Hey, Kristen, can you come downstairs and just record a scratch track for me really quick?" And then it ended up that like once she recorded the scratch track, we were all like, "That's how the song is now.
Yeah.
We can't change that."
Right.
So she ended up being on the album, and it's turned out really well. And now we have no idea how the hell we're gonna recreate it live if we do that.
She'll join you.
Yeah,
How proud are you?
We'll just bring her up.
I'm down. I would love that. I'm sure our kids would hate it.
I was gonna say, are your kids gonna be band members too? We'll put
We've
them to
tried
work
bringing-
comping the synth parts, man. I need all the hands I can get.
That's dude. I was going through all the B-roll video footage of the recording sessions, and I found the B-roll footage of you tracking synths on the Juno with my 2-year-old daughter reaching up and changing all the the pitch bend.
I just remember sitting there recording and being like, I'm pretty sure I played that voicing right. Like, what is? And then I look over and she's just like tearing
like
the
this little
pitch wheel
Ewok
down.
messing with you. Yeah. So anyway, yes, Kristen is amazing. She's a great singer. We'll probably continue to use her voice more in future albums. I really like the using her as a separate character idea. Like in Your Flaws, she is a character. She is voicing specific thoughts that are not thought by the main character. And I want to play off of that more in future albums. We'll find something to do with that.
Cool. I like that. And she's practicing and getting better too.
She is taking vocal lessons, and
She's
I mean,
dedicated.
when she recorded Truth and Your Flaws, it was like right at the beginning of when she started vocal lessons. She had 0 vocal training in her life up to that point,
And it was already
it
amazing.
sounded so good. Like she has this like natural, pure, like it's like this innocence to her voice. Like she just sounds so pure.
Yeah, can you explain that?
She's
I
breathy.
I don't know, like she's breathy and airy, but in a very like
But with
almost
power.
childlike way.
Sure.
But now she's learning how to get power behind that, and it's really cool to hear the transformation in her voice. So excited to see what that does in future albums.
Cool. So you also have a saxophonist, and you played trombone.
I played trombone.
Yes.
Here's what happened with the trombone is I was like, so I used to play trombone back in high school. It was like my started in junior high. It was like my early music experience playing in jazz bands, pep bands, that kind of thing. And then I didn't play for years because as soon as I played basses, I was like, this is what I'm doing. my music teacher hated me. He was like, you just gotta play trombone. We don't have trombone players. And I was like, man, I just want to play metal and bass. And he was not super happy with that. So after high school, I probably didn't touch trombone for, I don't know, a long time. And then I remember being in the studio and be like, this part needs horns. I guarantee you I can play trombone. And I remember going to play trombone and being like, holy shit, my chops are not up. And just like within 5 minutes, my whole face just being like, so
We
yeah.
had you in there. It's one note.
It
that you're
is
on the
one
album
note.
for.
It's
It's just
just
this.
so hard for me to play, man.
But
It'd
we
been too
tracked that
long.
note so many times. We were in there for like 2 hours, just like, hey, let's go again.
One note.
Give my lips a rest. Let's try later.
So then a saxophonist came in at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so one of the party bands that I've been playing in, the sax player, his name's Hayden Payne. And he
Rad
has,
name.
Yeah.
right?
I know.
It's like sounds like he should be a pro wrestler or something. But Hayden also has joined our Pink Floyd tribute. We have a lot of bands.
Right.
Too many.
Our
I just
Pink
play
Floyd
drums, so
tribute,
it's
he
fine.
plays all the sax parts. And so it was actually Cason's suggestion.
I suggested it for so long too.
Mhm.
I was like, you gotta do a metal saxophone solo.
Metal sax solo. It was the right call. It was like it's one
Oh
of
my God.
one of the highlights of the album for me. When I
So,
listened through it.
which is, this part's really interesting because this is a part of the album where the tone shifts pretty drastically and like the narrative shifts. And we had been planning on having like scenes from a memory type sound bites to kind of help you understand what's happening. And that's what I thought was going to happen, because a few weeks prior to this we had a band meeting about what we were going to do.
Yep.
And then Rylee was like, hey, listen to this, and I listened to it, and it was a saxophone solo over one of the heaviest things we have ever done.
Yep.
And I was like,
Well, and
Yes.
I remember too, because I kept bringing it up over like it must have been like a 1.5 year period.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, really needs a saxophone solo, and you're like, no, man, we've got it planned. Like, we're gonna do these sound bite things, and I was like, you guys needs a saxophone solo, and I was like, if I say it enough times, they'll record a
I
saxophone
mean, that's
solo.
what you have to do with Rylee.
And then they'll be like, oh,
you gotta say it
actually, this
enough
sounds
times that I
good.
eventually think it's my idea.
But like it gave me such a fucking chubby, because one of my favorite things in music is saxophones over metal.
Yeah.
Like if you've ever heard
Thank you,
Ishan
Ghost.
before.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ishan,
It's good
yeah.
stuff.
Dude, like Eagle and the Snake is one of the most rad songs of all time. And that's it.
It's a cool texture. I love
my
it.
God.
Yeah, it
It's a
worked
cool
out very
sound.
well.
So off topic, but sound bites. Where did the sound bites from Beach Death from?
So there's the one before Motels. There's the one before We Can... Oh, no, the one after Motels, Before We Can Swim. That's right. The one where he's like... the dude talking about... Can
You don't love me anymore.
Oh,
That part,
that
or-
one's before Shooter.
That's a different one.
That one's... Yeah, that one's intense.
Yeah.
That one's intense. What do you mean you don't love me anymore?
Yeah.
Is that from like a movie?
Yeah, so Ian, there's also somewhere mixed in, I think we mixed in a David Bowie quote at some point too in the album somewhere. Yeah, Ian would just go down like YouTube deep dives into like old movies from the 1930s and 40s, and he would just send me like YouTube links and say, dude, listen to this from like 38 minutes and 10 seconds until 39 minutes and 14 seconds. That clip, we need it. You know, and I would literally just like pull it up on my computer and put a microphone up to the speaker and record the speaker and then mix it into the song.
Wow. That's funny.
It worked well.
You know, it's way easier just to rip the audio.
But you need
I
the
know, but
lo-fi
it
quality.
sounded so
that's
perfect
true,
and
that's
lo-fi
true,
and
yeah.
weird with just a microphone held up
Right.
to a speaker, you know?
Yeah, I like the sound of it when those come in.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Great job on
Worked
that.
well. Oh, thanks.
Beach Death, totally different subject.
Beach
Let's
Death.
not talk about Beach Death.
A much more successful band.
Much more successful band that's worked way less hard.
We're in that same band. Let's just not talk about it. It's
Oh,
So
yeah.
how
Totally
you make
fine.
hip hoppy type music?
I know. That's what we get for competing with ourselves.
Pop punk beach hip hop.
We'll do
Whatever
something else
we
with
are.
that someday.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So is there anything else we should talk about? Well, when is this album coming out? Are you gonna give us some more singles? What's
Oh,
going on
man.
next?
Oh boy.
Lots
So,
of things.
Yeah, album's gonna be released in October. I haven't released the official date yet. It'll be in October. honestly, I don't know the official date yet. I just know it'll be one of the weeks in October, and that's a guarantee. Because we have CDs printed, they've arrived at my house. Vinyl arrived this
He's
week.
got it.
We have the
We have
vinyl
the
right
vinyl
here.
over here. We
I
have
got
all
my
the product.
first look today.
Yep.
Oh god.
So everything's ready to go. We've got all at this point, the only thing we're waiting on is just music videos. We've got the music video for the song Water is mostly, it's about half done at this point. We've got a shoot planned next week to finish that one up, and then we'll be also
I need
doing
to
a
start working
video.
on that.
Yeah, you got some parts to learn. We've got
I never forget a part.
video for never mind.
I'm Dennis Chambers, baby.
We've got another video for Calling It Off that we're going to work on, probably in July/August, and then once we've got that done, then we're off to the races. We're ready.
So
to go.
those will be the singles.
Those will be, as well as How Did It Get So Good. That's the next single that we're releasing on July 6th, 7th, something like that. It's the first Friday in July. So it'll be How Did It Get So Good, and then Water, and then Calling It Off, and then album.
So now you have a bold claim on the inside of this artwork where it says that AH4 is not going to take 8 years.
I'm gonna hold you to that. When you put it in the record, now you're stuck with
Yeah,
it.
what's
It
gonna
can't
happen?
stop.
I was just being snarky. I was just
Is
writing stuff.
It's
that
not
came
gonna
to
take
my
us
head.
8 years. Is it gonna take us 9?
Dude, if it takes us 9 years, okay, wait up. If it takes us 8 years or 9 years or 10 years between albums, realistically, we only got 4 albums left in us
We
before
gotta
we're all
do
in
more
our
than that.
70s. So we got to do more than that. The last 4 or 5 years have been a very transitional phase for all of us, I think. Just in learning what we want to do with our lives and how does music fit within that. And I won't say we've figured everything out and we know 100% where we're going now,
But we have a
we're,
better idea.
Yeah, we kind of know, we have our feet under us a little more now than we have for the last while. Also, in the year 2019, I had a child, and in the year 2021, I had another child, and then shortly after, I got a vasectomy, and I will be having no more childs. And
That helps a lot. I'm proud of you,
the last
bud.
3 years have been dealing with little baby children at home, and we started recording this album 3 years ago, and because kids, it took us 3 years to get from starting tracking drums to getting the masters. But now my kids are a little bit older, and it's amazing how much I've been able to get done even just in the last 3 or 4 months. I've already got 3 songs basically written now.
We've gotten
demoed
together
out.
a few times.
We've jammed. Stuff's
things
already
ready to go.
coming together for the next album. So
So we'll shoot for one every 5 years.
I really want to contradict you on that, but I'm afraid to.
I mean, we can't make any public promises, but you'll have more music in your hands.
Yeah, that's true.
We haven't decided the exact date yet, but it will be in October. We know this. We know this because we have CDs, we have vinyl, we have all the promo stuff that we need. Everything's ready to go. We're not waiting on a label to green light things. We can kind of just release it when we want. So October's the month we've decided. We will have a single coming out on the first Friday of July, the first Friday of August, and the first Friday of September. The first one out of those 3 being How Did It Get So Good, and then August will be Water, and then September will be Calling It Off,
Nice.
which is the Jordan Rudess song that we all love. And then album in October.
Very cool. So where do we find you guys?
All the places.
All the best places.
Spotify being the most important of those. Secondary to that would be Instagram. That's probably where all the cool kids are these days.
No.
All the cool, the cool middle-aged kids.
Yes.
Remember, this is Prague. We don't care about the under 27 demographic.
But we do, for them, we have.
Oh, we have the new TikTok. We are so excited about the new TikTok.
You're excited about the TikTok.
I
I'm
won't.
excited about the new TikTok. I'm telling you.
I mean,
I'm
it goes off
telling
with the
yous.
kids. You gotta reach out to them. Extend the
Just
olive branch.
watch the TikToks. You'll understand what I mean. I punched Zach in one of them.
Actually,
good.
that's true.
So
Did you guys turn on your microphones?
I did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're professionals.
Okay.
Okay, good.
I was just gonna fuck with you.
So
Thinking that we couldn't hear you.
Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, TikTok, all the other places. We have a website. It's adventhorizonmusic.com. Don't go there right now if you're seeing this in the month of June because it's password protected. But by the time you see this in August, it won't be anymore. So go to our website.
Cool story, bro.
adventhorizonmusic.com. That's pretty much it. We got a lot of music to share. We're super excited, and I don't know if we're gonna do a release show or not for this yet. We have talked about doing a album listening party at some point, like booking out some cool local place. I've even thought about booking out like one of the cool like 15.1 surround rooms at like a megaplex or something and doing an album listening party there.
That would be cool.
That would be rad.
So potentially will be something like that in the coming months. We'll be also announcing pre-orders for the album, both vinyl and CD copies, probably in the next month or so here.
Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. You guys make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Advent Horizon so you can hear A Cell to Call Home when it comes out in October. Advertisements. Okay.
Yeah, woo! Out. We did it.
All right, we redid it.
We didn't take 30 minutes to do that, right? Half of it didn't get cut off.